Hello again. Thank you for attending this workshop. This workshop this week is on the topic of adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership is critically important today in that we're expecting a lot of different things from managers today, and they're getting a lot of different instruction. Sometimes that instruction is not the same, so we have some confusion as to how we really want to go about leading organizations. Let me give you the basic text that goes with this concept. No amount of knowledge has practical value until it is applied to human needs or concerns. Someone needs to articulate what is known, show relevancy to the situation or challenge at hand, and propose a course of action that can create a meaningful result. It is the work of learning leaders to craft visions and futures that inspire others to accept change and become participants in the journey forward. The adaptive leadership competency is another foundational anchor in the learnership discipline because it moves knowledge into action. Theory is turned into practice, and practice leads to meaningful accomplishment for individuals and social organizations. Adaptive leadership applies knowledge management, which has been enabled by situational learning, which is supported by systems thinking and pattern recognition. It is at the end of the line of what we want to get from our engine. Now, with that in mind, once again, when we're talking about leaders, we're talking about us. Leaders are not only the people who have superior positions in organizations. Everybody can be a leader, and many people are leaders in areas that they don't even know they're the leader in. Because there are people who are influential, they have the right knowledge, they have the right information, and they help people get things done. And those are the kind of people we want to get working in our programs and our projects, because they are going to deliver service for themselves and service for others, and that's the best win-win you can get. On the other hand, as we're going through our program here, we're working our way through, and we've come up finally with number 9. Number 9 is where the action takes place, because we're going to rely upon the adaptive leader who will look at the circumstances which he or she finds himself dealing with and make the right strategy. And there are lots of different leadership styles that can be used based upon the circumstance. There is no one right way. And so today we're going to be talking about, it looks like a busy chart, but it's pretty straightforward, because this chart, once again, sitting within our frame of lots of people and challenges, basically says that we have a leader who is responsible for the current system's performance, and that leader is going to be told or wants to improve the performance of that system. And what we know from studies with MIT, IBM, and a lot of other places, there is a hardcore way of doing that. If you want to change a large system, you're going to have to think about, should you change your strategy and or your people? Do you actually have to just redesign your processes? How much technology should you use, or do you need more or less? Is there a cultural impact, and is there a structure? And all of that has to do with an adaptive leadership modality in which the leader has to be able to make choices, has to decide how much strategy, how many people, how much technology, what is the proper balance in order to get the change that we need to get. And that leader is making decisions about the people involved, personal, the organization itself, the community in which it exists, and also the society in which it lives. Even though these, once again, look like they're outside players, they're not. They are inside players in that there could be just one item from each of those that drives whether this is going to change to this. And in addition, that adaptive leadership is lucky, though. They have a systematic process that can be used, which includes build a sense of urgency with what you're trying to do, find the stakeholders that will help you get the job done, create a vision and a strategy to do what you have to do, communicate that vision, start broad-based action, and look for short team wins, and add additional projects that support what you're trying to do, and look for cultural anchors, which simply means whenever you're doing something that's in sync with the culture that is wanted and desired, hook onto that thing, because you're going to want people to say, we want more of that, and that's okay with us. What you don't want to be doing is avoiding cultural aspects simply because it doesn't accept what you're doing. And the critical thing, as the adaptive leader knows, sometimes you got to be directive and you got to tell people what they have to do and when. There are other times when you say to people, it's your decision, you're the expert, you decide when and where it has to be done. And those are the typical ends of the continuum on what we ask leaders to do. The problem of it is, because of personality types and things like this, some people just lead one way. They have one preferred way of doing things, and because they want to stick by it, they're not necessarily the right people to have the job. And in the business of project management, it's a known fact that the person who starts the project quite often is not the project manager at the end. That they have people who start projects well, but they have other people who finish projects well. And they don't necessarily have to be the same people. It's just a fact of how project management is done. And here's another very rich concept also. It basically says, when you talk about the leader attributes, the roles, and dialogue, what you're looking for from the leader. I have literature that says, regardless of where you start on these circles, there are characteristics of the person themselves, such as the person's objective. He's reflective, she's got courage, she's intuitive, she's confident. These are more like character factors as far as their style. But there are also roles that have to be played, and these are not necessarily tied to these particular character factors. So this is a circle of activity. These things are going on more or less as necessary, but these are roles. Sometimes the leader is just a learner. He admits that I don't know much about this business. I'm going to look to you guys to lead me and others. Other times he's really a trainer and he's going to help the group understand. Sometimes he's a strategist. Sometimes he's the visionary. Sometimes he's a listener. Sometimes he's a facilitator. So the point of it is, we expect a lot from our adaptive leaders. They have to be able to change even some of their apparent skill set. They may have to actually prove that they have some competence when the people don't know them and they really don't trust them. So you have to be a little bit of an adaptive person to fill the bill when you are an adaptive leader. But also what's important is, what kind of discussions and communication are you leading? The first type is just what you call as a controlled discussion, which people just have a discussion, they just roll through it, and it's not really all that focused. There's also skilled conversation. Conversation means you stick to the points that are agreed to, and you get zero in on what it is you're working on, so it takes more discipline to have a conversation than just a discussion. Then there's reflective dialogue, where you realize that unless you allow people some time to think and go back over past knowledge and past experience, they won't be working with the latest on what they need to be working with. And lastly, there's generative dialogue, which is really about creating a vision and saying, what if we did this, and what if we did that, and what are the options? So all of those styles of meeting management, if you will, plus these roles, plus these kinds of attributes about the person themselves, are all in play. So when you take a leadership course, the question is, did you get the leadership that allows you to be the adaptive leadership? Anytime you're told that there's one best way, there is not one best way. There's certain best ways for certain circumstances, but there is no one best way that always applies to leadership. Now the last piece in this is an interesting piece that takes a little bit of brain stimulation. Here, I'll walk you through it just conceptually. What we know as far as trying to do decision making, let me bring the problem in, trying to do decision making when there's a lot of factors involved, is you have to be careful to stack the program up with everything that's possibly influencing the work. For example, in American Learnership Forum, in our concept, we work with personal, organizational, community, and societal factors. We work with social, political, economic, technological, and ecological, and geographical factors. And what we do is we put them all in a line and we make some judgments as to which of these, based upon our understanding of the problem, and the problem has to do with global warming threat to Washington, D.C., and major floods within 5 to 8 years, initiate contingency planning. What is the problem? What is its context? What information is relevant? And then you have to say when, how complex, what resources, blah, 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 blah. So you have to have initial early conversation, which is very broad and very inclusive, but not necessarily for sure. There's various dimensions of importance. What you do is with that same group, they have to decide whether it's a surface or a tangential impact on these things, or whether it's a core or fundamental impact on these things. So what I have shown is the group has already decided that they think this is pretty serious, that's pretty serious, this is not too serious, this is very important, and that's not too important. So they've laid out a picture of their personal mindsets. Once you've done that, you have something to hold people accountable for now. You can't take this view and complain a lot about it and then not do anything about it when your chance comes up. So you have to declare who you are early on. But what happens is basically when you use this methodology, you have your conversations with this as a basic frame, and as you learn more, these bars can go up or down as things become clearer, and the group can vote whether it's 100% or 50% or whatever it is. But at some point in time, when you get the set of factors laid out and at the height that they are appropriately being considered, and you're willing to be held accountable for that, now you're able to make decisions and hold the people accountable for what the decisions were that they made based upon the data that everybody agreed that they would use. So it's no fair later on at the end to bring up things that you personally really wanted to drive down everybody's throat, and they're not buying it now because you didn't support it all the way along. But this is creating a decision space where you articulate expectations, you do critical thinking and authentic dialogue, and that's about as fair and about as rich as you can probably have your teamwork. Very hard to find this kind of thing actually being done. Lastly, around the same notion is decision analysis and synthesis. It's how the leader does his analysis and synthesis. It's the same factors, pretty much the same factors here, but we start off with the fact that we want to know what do we know as our situational learning to start off, and we know that our starting point there is driven by systems thinking and pattern recognition. So what we do is we know and we can put some qualifiers on the thing called situational learning, and then our goal is to take that and evolve it down to what is the knowledge management tools or techniques that might be useful, and how would that affect the adaptive leader. But you can't get from here down to here till you factor in these different levels of thinking, and it needs good conversation, good teamwork to come up with what is the influence from these things. I don't know that I've ever seen anything better than this. I know that this is hardly ever done just like it is. What you need is experienced strategic leaders and subject matter experts and skilled facilitators. What you need are people who are really good facilitators. They know what's inbounds and what's out of bounds, people who really know the factors, and you need someone who drives people forward to conclusion. Now these two charts, the previous one here and this one here, work off the same two sets of concepts: the type of knowledge and the area of the social system we're dealing with. The point here is, particularly when we deal with anything that has to do with the community, credibility is important with the community because it's their money involved. And people are always very careful with their spending their own money, and they're always critical of how other people spend their money, particularly in the local community. This is a strategy that would hold water with people who want to do programs and want to lay it out to get support for their programs, because everybody comes out as an honest broker in a program like this. And once again, depending upon your own individual play here, if you're not making any heavy decisions, this is certainly too much for you to even have to get involved in. The key thing is to know that you can reach back and suggest this sometime. When somebody's starting to discuss it, you can be the hero that says, if we're going to do this, let's do this with authenticity and honesty, and so it's transparent. And come up with it, and almost everybody can sort of figure out that you can do this together, and you can do it in a way that everybody can watch. And you can have some nitpickers and so forth, and that's okay. But in the end, you'll have a solution that at least represents a group of people's thinking in a holistic way. And after making choices there, I'm leaving it to you to always do the right thing for your own career at this time and for the age you're at. Understand, though, you might have done this at 40 years old, and you come back and you're doing it again at 50, because you don't only do this one time, because there's different circumstances in your life that drives you to doing a true assessment this way. Thank you.